try and call the meeting to order here. Good morning and welcome to the September 27th County Board meeting. Let the record show all commissioners are present. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our first item is to approve today's agenda. Everyone should have it in front of you. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Clark.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Persky. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, next we have the Public Access Forum. Anyone wishing to address the board on issues not found on today's agenda may do so at this time, either in person or virtually. And I do believe we have one that will be virtual. And the individual comments are limited to 3 to 4 minutes. County board members will not engage in dialogue with speakers, but rather refer the matter to appropriate county department. A citizen may speak at the Public Access Forum only once per month. All right, do we have anyone that wishing to speak at the Public Access Forum? If so, please come up, state your name and address. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Peter Wilson. I live at 1108 Celebration Drive, Sartell, Minnesota, 56377. A couple things. One is I'm extremely disappointed at some of the conversations that have been had by our commissioners. One were comments that we are a democracy. We are not. A mob is a democracy. We are a republic. Now, maybe some additional training needs to be done or some needs to be conducted in the beginning. But just as a slight comment, the next thing, I've been concerned on some things and about pseudo-patriots and some other comments. Again, I don't want to come up here and make negative comments, but one could easily make them on many other things. And I feel an apology is appropriate. I don't come up here to call people who I disagree with Perskyites or Clarkers. So again, same thing should be respected. Going back briefly to the elections, in 2016, which is past, I don't know if the time frame for reviewing what was potentially done incorrectly is too late or not. But I'm wondering how many felons voted, how many people voted that didn't live at the addresses, how many other things took place. If there was an audit and this is out there, I'm sorry, I guess I'm unaware of it. But again, trying to get a handle on the past determines kind of a feeling. And again, I think this is warranted. Last thing on this, I want to touch on, and we need to open this door because we need to start talking about this. Before the 2020 election, there was a national agenda driven by one of the national parties to change election laws, procedures, and policies, many which were against the state's constitution, and that has not fully been remedied yet. But in that case, since our costs of administering elections appears to be, well, going up due to the pandemic or to other things that were passed, we need to start looking at what might be called reparations due the county for the additional costs to conduct elections. That should be borne by the party who manipulated or changed or incented or promoted these things to occur. And again, when we're told we can't do voting evaluations based on some imagined cost or real cost of $50,000, I kind of look at it, maybe that should be borne by one of our state's political parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here wishing to speak at the Public Access Forum? Anyone else present? Otherwise, we'll go to, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen, and Terrell, Ms. Clark. First, I want to thank Ms. Clark for not saying things that are derogatory to us, like another gentleman has. I'd like to read a letter I sent to one of the commissioners about 2.5 weeks ago. Dear Mr. Persky, I cannot begin to tell you how offended and sad I and others, I don't like doing this. I and others are, that you seem to think we are idiots for questioning the election results. I have heard you twice now repeat derogatory statements about those that feel the election was stolen from us in 2020. One of the snidest remarks you made was a month and a half ago when you stated, there are those that believe the world is run by aliens, and then there are those who believe that the election was stolen. You sound like MSNBC and CNN. You also seem to be all-knowing. You may want to look up Democrat Clinton Curtis, who voted for Obama and Biden. He was the person that changed the algorithms to change the vote from Kerry to Bush. Senator Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, one of the machines to be destroyed. Republicans are just as guilty as Democrats. They ignored it. I truly cannot believe your arrogance, and I am so offended by your unwillingness to even consider the possibility that it may have occurred. Oh, man. It is sad and demeaning to Democrats as well as Republicans, just the people of the United States. It would be nice if people with your attitude would prove there was no cheating by allowing a forensic audit, the CVR, can't even remember what it is right now, I'm sorry, by allowing the forensic audit to occur and prove there was no cheating to people like me and the rest of us. Thank you, Mr. Persky.
Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak? Otherwise, we'll go to, okay.
My name's Mark Morris. I live at 671 Roberts Road, apartment 204, Sartell, Minnesota. Good morning, commissioners. The topic I'd like to bring up would be about cast vote records. I heard from Laura Loudenbach and Roxanne Garretts of Stearns County Election Board mention that it would cost $50,000 to have the cast vote record turned on, and it was not in the 2022 budget. Why does it cost $50,000? I've looked through Eric von Mecklen's book, and there's no, the actual machines, the DS450 machine costs $50,745. So the machine in general, the whole software and everything's like $10,000. So I don't get why you should be able to go through a screen and be able to set up the cast vote records through a screen or through a management screen, file management screen. And at the last commissioners meeting, you voted and passed a budget for adjustment for $303,309 to purchase 7 new vehicles for a sheriff's department. I feel that's why aren't we doing anything with election integrity and anything with that, with the money that we've had? Because reading in his book, it says that the $4,250 alone could be repurposed toward 20 election judges at $20 an hour if we were able to go to paper ballots instead of having all this extra support and all these extra things that are added for doing the machines and all that. Well, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much, commissioners, for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience wishing to speak at this time? Otherwise, we'll go to the online
Should be able to.
person. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Eric Van Mecklen. I live in Minneapolis, but I spent a lot of summers growing up in St. Cloud, so it's close to my heart. I was an SOS candidate with 111,000 votes in the Republican primary. I've spoken with numerous commissioners, auditors, election staff, administrators, attorneys in a variety of counties throughout Minnesota, as well as a lot of people like those just in front of you now who really just want transparency and accountability in elections. I've studied the law, I've studied our election process, I've studied electronic voting systems in particular, and the book which is presented to you there with some of my brief findings, which I believe one of the commissioners in Stearns has in their possession, having attended a talk that I gave to learn more about this And having spoken with all those people, commissioners, I think therefore I believe I can empathize with your difficult position. Whatever you choose to do, you won't please everyone. You may decide to take actions unpopular with your fellow commissioners, with the Secretary of State, and even your own county auditor and attorney. But your actions and courage are certainly needed and being tested and being watched right now. At minimum, you will be reelected or removed based on decisions in coming months related to election integrity. But at day's end, it is not your reputation at stake, but whether you can live with yourself and sleep good at night. So a few comments. Why are we talking about an audit for 2020 when the Republicans voted 51K versus Democrats 32K at the presidential level? Well, it's because we want to know whether that was accurate or not. And with 53% of those votes coming in as absentee or mail-in, that's a new record in Stearns and something to look into. Now, County Auditor Randy Schreifel has stated that the elections in Stearns are perfect. That is a verifiably false statement unless a full audit of 100% of the physical ballots are hand tallied and compared with the machine tallies. Now, your post-election reviews are only reviewing less than 1% of the votes and never auditing most races. So I don't know how Randy Schreifel is able to say that unless we are able to do something like that. Now, what a lot of us have been asking for in Stearns is for this cast vote record. This is a way that the machines can tell on themselves. It doesn't give us a full audit, but it does a great deal towards establishing some trust and providing some transparency in terms of the digital record. Certainly doesn't cost $50,000 to provide. And actually, there have been 2 counties in Minnesota which have already provided this free of charge as an example of what is possible. Also showing that what the Secretary of State implied that these are not available is false. But moving forward from 2020, let's look at the primaries. Sandy Clocker, who I know you know very well, and I met with Mr. Schreifel as well as Laura Loudenbach ahead of the primaries. And we learned from them that 8 of 76 tabulators were tested. That means 68 were not tested. Also, it was not apparent that they knew the significance at the time in that meeting of the cast vote record from the vantage point of election transparency. It should be noted that around the country, about 517 of these have been published from 517 counties in a variety of states already for the 2020 election. But we haven't yet seen this for either for our 2022 primary in Stearns, which again would have been pretty easy to publish and provide that public data. And I think going forward, what we're going to see as a trend is that not publishing that kind of data is basically an admission of election fraud in your county. So what can we do going forward? Well, first, from the perspective of the cast vote record.
Eric, can you wrap it up?
Yeah,
quick?
okay. The key thing here is that as townships decide to pass resolutions to hand tally and machine tally, as Haven Township attempted to do in the primary until they were interfered with by their county auditor and attorney, it looks like. As townships and Stearns opt to do this, I really urge you to allow them to go through with that, because if the machines are working perfectly, a hand tally on the election day should go a long way to verify that and also make a lot of folks much more comfortable with the results. And finally, I would say that if you want an example of how this is done, you can give a call next door to Washington County, Wisconsin, which just announced for a population of 137,000 people that they will be not only using their Dominion machines, but also hand counting their entire election on November 8th. So that's a great example of what we can do here in Minnesota as well as in Stearns. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Okay, is there anyone else in attendance that would like to speak at the Public Access Forum? Anyone else? Not seeing anyone else. We'll move on to our next item, which is the consent agenda. And in front of you, you should have that. I believe there's 13 items on the consent today. Anybody have anything that wants to be pulled, discussed? Otherwise, a motion to approve the consent would be in order.
I can move that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lenzmeyer. Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Mergen. Any further discussion on the consent agenda items? Any further discussion? Not seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next up, we have a public hearing to discuss an application for an off-sale intoxicating liquor license submitted by Kelly Caspers on behalf of the Store of St. Anna. Randy, are you taking that one?
Sure. So this is a new off-sale liquor license required to have a public hearing. Kelly is here if she'd like to come up and say a few words, but I think the residents expressed an interest of having off-sale. There's not one in the area, and so Kelly and her convenience store is looking at doing that. So I don't know if you have anything more to say.
Hello, I'm Kelly Caspers. That's my husband, Gordon Caspers. We own the store of St. Anna. It's a small convenience store, and there's no off-sale liquor anymore in our area. It used to be called The Landing. They don't have that anymore. It's Rebs now. Pelican Lake Ballroom doesn't do it. Ellen's across the way has been shut down for years, so there's no place for St. Anna people to go. And so this would bring more of the community together, and we're growing that way. We've brought in a lot of things for the store. We got gas, groceries, pop, bait, live bait, tackle, and the liquor store is combined with that.
Okay,
And it has been signed off by the attorney and the sheriff. So
okay. All right. So at this, any commissioners have any questions before I open the public hearing? All right, with that, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to testify on behalf of the request? If so, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address. And is there anyone here wishing to speak on this matter? Last time, anyone wishing to speak? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. And the board, and what are your wishes?
I just have a question.
Go
I'll
ahead,
move for
Commissioner.
approval.
Has there been a off-sale liquor location there in St. Anna in the past?
They have applied for 3-2 off sale, not the owner before us, but the prior owner.
Okay. They applied it, but they did have it?
I think they did have it. Yeah.
I think so.
I think they did have off sale 3-2, but we're going for,
Okay,
Yeah.
Regular liquor license, okay.
Didn't the Landing have an off-sale liquor license?
for 3-2.
Or just 3-2?
Dave did. Yeah.
The previous owner.
Yep. Sorry, my husband had a stroke 7 years ago, difficulty talking.
Sometimes not.
But yeah, Dave had it. Revs had one for 3-2. They still have one? Okay. But we've talked to them. They really don't want to have off sale, so they're actually happy that we would take that off of them.
Okay.
I'll move for approval.
Okay, we got a motion by Commissioner Mergen to approve the request.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Persky. Any further discussion by the board? Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Good luck.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Come out. We have great ice cream in summer.
Sounds good.
Okay, and then we have another public hearing. Angie Berg, I believe you're going to handle this one. This was in regards to consider ordinance number 642, controlled access on Stearns County lakes and rivers.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Angie Berg, Environmental Services. Next on your agenda item is to conduct the public hearing to consider ordinance 462 regarding controlled access lots. Previous action was the County Planning Commission held a public hearing on August 18th, 2022, and recommended approval with some concerns or questions relating to why was the standard originally removed from the ordinance. By way of a little bit of background, we had gotten some questions in terms of why is this being requested. So under state law and county ordinance, anybody can propose amendments to the county ordinance. It doesn't have to be a property owner, it can be, and there's a process by which the board needs to follow, which is going to the Planning Commission, and then having the hearing that we're having today. The proposal would apply to all counties, not just all lakes and rivers in the county, not just the development proposal that Mr. Leggett has in front of you. He happens to be the applicant for the text amendment. The Department of Natural Resources is required to and did approve the change. It's still more restrictive than state rule. And a little bit of background, and Jennifer Buckentine's here too. She had done all of the research on this, so she can jump in if I misstate something. But back in April of 2005, the Planning Commission had recommended to the commissioners that the controlled access lot language be eliminated from county ordinance. And I'm just reading right from the minutes. It said the commission felt that this section could be revoked at this time, and if in the future they felt it would be appropriate, something could be put back into the ordinance. So that was in 2005. Why that came up is there was a couple of developments in Stearns County. One was on a smaller lake, and it didn't have a public access, so there was a proposed plat with, and I should describe, controlled access is where you have a dock or mooring and or both access to a lake from non-riparian properties, typically. Okay. So there was a bunch of controversy surrounding that particular plat, and so that was why the Planning Commission recommended to remove it. So in front of you today is the proposal to look at amending the ordinance to bringing back controlled access in some capacity. It's on your packet page 152, where it states proposed amendment. I won't read it, but the underlying text is what's being proposed. So again, the state rule allows it with some standards. We disallowed it, and now this proposal, if you will, would be somewhere in the middle, because it would be only through a development proposal, and it would be also subject to a subdivision agreement, which, as you know, the Planning Commission and the board and the public have an opportunity to comment on. So with that, unless you have any questions for me, this is a public hearing. We did receive written comments, which were included in your packet, and I also believe Mike Rozecki is here today to testify.
Okay. Any comments from the board? Otherwise, I'll open the public hearing. Okay. With that, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address.
Excuse me. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
My name's Mike Rozecki. I live at 19116 Edgeview Road, Richmond, Minnesota. That happens to be, we live on Cedar Island Lake, which is part of the Sauk River Chain of Lakes, or the Horseshoe Chain. I provided you a letter dated, I think, the 20th to express my concerns and provide, I think, some information, and even suggested an alternative to this proposed ordinance amendment. Hopefully you've had a chance to read that and understand my concerns. It appears to me that the primary purpose of the developer's request to amend the existing shoreline ordinance is to increase the value and marketability of the non-riparian lots proposed in Majestic River Estates. And non-riparian lots are the lots that aren't designed or platted in a manner that they would have direct access to, in this case, the Mississippi River. I think the other concern that I have, it looks to me that this amendment has been proposed by a developer, which I can understand, and it's been looked at and triggered based on how it applies and fits to Majestic River Estates. But the concern I have is this is potentially going to apply to all rivers and lakes within Stearns County, and I'm not sure that really there's been a broad-based look at the potential impacts of allowing or amending the ordinance in this fashion. The other thing that I would say is I've evaluated it, and I had followed the board's consideration of the comp plan and its shoreland management objectives, and I really don't see how this proposed amendment benefits the public or implements the goals and objectives pertaining to shoreland development as set forth in the fairly recently amended comp plan. I think that if the commissioners see some benefit, I don't think one size fits all, as this ordinance amendment approaches it, is the best way to look at it. If there's some benefit to allowing controlled access, I think the use of a conditional use may make some more sense. And then in summary, I would say that I'm respectfully asking that the county commissioners not amend the ordinance, keep the existing language that doesn't permit controlled access in any zone district. And then my last comment is a kid growing up and whatever, I got advice from my dad a lot. And my dad would say, Mike, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here wishing to speak? Please step up to the microphone, state your name and address.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Leggett, 42076 County Road 1, Rice, Minnesota. As mentioned, I am one of the developers specific to Majestic River Estates. And again, this came to light when we were doing our design analysis on this property. We have basically roughly 10 acres, and again, I'm speaking specific to this and how it got generated, or thought process was to have the utilization of this land. Now, we can create a common lot area. This one just happens to have the waterfront on it. And then that was brought to light by staff that because it has the waterfront, that this ordinance or statute existed that would limit the potential use of it. So my understanding would be we could maybe partition off the waterfront, still have that common access area, but people would have to walk by that waterfront and not be able to utilize it. So again, that's where we felt there's really probably some over constraints with the way the statute's written. And again, we're asking for that to be analyzed. Again, we certainly, and I think staff did a great job with, they helped write the amendment verbiage with ourselves, putting the checks and balances in place. Again, I think Angie also mentioned that we're in the middle here somewhere. It's actually less, we're still more constrictive than the state statutes relative to this. And we believe that, again, that we need to add some flexibility in this ordinance so that we can look on situations like this on a case-by-case versus having a blanketed, heavily constricted ordinance that would not allow common sense applications. Again, what we're looking to do is to utilize that 10 acres. It's nearly 1/3 mile of riverfront where we could have people, both, our thought is both the non-waterfront and the waterfront people we would like to have as, quote, ownership in this. And why that is because obviously neighbors, kids, friends, we want all of them to be able to utilize together, walk down, ride their bikes, walk, go down there, fish offshore, drop their canoes in, drop their paddle boards in, do whatever it may that they'd like to in this area and utilize it. And again, I don't know, I think in some discussion, again, obviously with, the comprehensive plan and utilization of the land and keeping the integrity of the waterfront, that's certainly things that we want to do as well. There actually is already a path down there that was created by the neighbors to the north. So, I mean, literally there's four-wheelers, snowmobiles that have been driving on this section of land for not just years, but decades. So we want to convert that basically into a walking trail, skiing, snowshoeing, whatever it may be, but to allow all the residents, and again, the benefit to the new residents in this development to be able to fully utilize both the land and the water resource. And again, still have all the controls and balances and the stipulations that staff help write into the verbiage. So I guess any questions for me relative to that?
Anyone have a question for Mr. Leggett?
Mr. Chair, I do.
Commissioner Persky?
Steve, yeah, I like what you've said about making it, and I think you're talking about making it a passive recreation area. And I took a look at, the meaning of passive, and I think you've alluded to it too. So that would be non-motorized. So there wouldn't be ATVs and there wouldn't be snowmobiles using these trails, correct?
Correct. The only thought relative to that would be the potential for like a golf cart or something, a low impact. Again, we don't want ATVs, we don't want heavy, high speed type things. I'm thinking someone that has, I think about our neighbor has a similar access point and their parents, if someone wants to get down to that area that maybe has a disability, is older, can't walk, we do have a little bit of a slope there that you need to get down to. But our goal would be to, again, it is treated as a walking, bicycling trail, but we would want to have discussion relative. And again, I think that's part of, the individualized basis in this case. What would we allow to get down to that waterfront? And again, we also have to remember, we have to get down there to potentially mow, trim trees, do things of that nature if we need to get a mower down there. So there may be some gas operated type things that would have to go down into that for maintenance at times. Again, it's very large. It gets a fairly, at a third mile and 10 acres, the trail system, the loop trail system that we were trying to take advantage of is pretty lengthy. So,
Go ahead. You mentioned, again, if we're talking about passive recreation, and I see in the definition it talks about canoeing and kayaks, and I think that would be an excellent use of that property. I'm concerned about the docking in that, does that become now a magnet for boats coming off the river? And so, for canoe and kayaking access, would you necessarily need to have the dock in that? Also, you mentioned fishing from shore. By all means, fishing from shore would be a great activity, but what's the necessity for the dock?
Yeah, the dock, I guess I would visualize that again, obviously, because we have a large stretch where kids could, have access points for fishing along that stretch. But the access point, and again, the dock, which again, with the river and fluctuating waters, is kind of a high maintenance element. But one thought would be is that, again, there's specific verbiage in this already that there would be no mooring of boats, meaning you cannot come up and tie a boat to it and, and leave it there basically. So again, it's kind of a come and go type situation. The only thought with the dock would be is that, let's say, again, they put the boat in down maybe at the county park landing, whatever it may be, and they're coming to pick the family up, the cooler or whatever. They walk down to the waterfront, they can safely pull the boat up to the end of the dock, put their goods and stuff, and go enjoy their day on the water. So, and alongside of that, obviously the dock could be utilized for fishing as well.
So then this would be no overnight mooring or none
Correct.
of that stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Our intention is absolutely again, and I think that's going back to Angie's talking point. I think this obviously the over constraint on this statute and ordinance was originally put in place to avoid multiple dock scenarios or multiple mooring, 10 boats sitting on one dock kind of scenario. Again, our goal here is just to have utilization of the natural resources to be able to allow these residents, the kids, a safe and fun place to, go get exercise, go fishing. Again, I'm president of the student fishing club in our area. We have 90 kids on our team. It would just be a shame if kids could not go down and utilize the resources. We've been pushing, this is our 5th year on the student team. We push for fishing, getting kids out, being active. And for us to have 10 acres sitting there non-usable is just doesn't make sense to me. And that's why we're asking for this ordinance change to be able to utilize it for everybody.
Commissioner Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recognize that you're trying to solve a particular problem, which is understandable, and what I'm hearing you say makes a lot of sense. This will obviously end up impacting every place in our county. So I will be asking Ms. Berg to perhaps address her thoughts about that after we're done with the public meeting. But I'm wondering what you think about that, given you're trying to solve, you've been able to talk to us about a whole bunch of things that you're planning on putting in place. And obviously you can't speak for everybody else, but they're all going to be impacted by that, thinking about what Mr. Rosinski just brought up.
Absolutely.
The unintended consequences that could be.
Yeah, and I think that's where it falls back to the, the development agreement, that, again, that the verbiage and that there's oversight by both the Planning Commission and yourselves when the development and the development agreement is written by staff along with their self as developers, that there are control measures put in place and that it is analyzed at both the Planning Commission and the board level prior to that approval of the development. And again, that verbiage would be specific to the development agreement. So again, not just anybody can go out and say, hey, I have an open lot here, I want common access. I mean, that's still going to require a full-blown process, checks and balances by everybody, including yourself, so.
So just as a follow-up, the way I'm reading this, and I think what I'm hearing you say, is this would not apply to anybody who's existing. It would apply to new subdivisions who got approval.
Again, I can't, that'd probably be an Angie question, I guess.
Yep, I'll ask her too, but it does say subdivision, so it might be, I'm not sure how something that's already been developed would come back, but maybe there is a way.
Yeah,
So
and
I'm
it would,
interested in hearing about that.
yeah, and that's tricky. Again, once the lots are established, people are in place, it's certainly harder to insert something into a development agreement or an HOA to make something like that happen, so.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Anything else?
Commissioner Persky?
Mr. Chair. Say about the building, the structure on there, what would be the use for the structure?
Again, that verbiage was something that, staff included as, again, part of some of the other statutes that are relative to a waterfront property. So that's just one of the common allowances, along with the docking or access point, that there could be, I believe, up to 150 square foot accessory shed. So again, whether we talked about a little bit this planning commission, whether there would be like, emergency life vests or a throw ring or something at that building that, or something relative to the dock equipment or mooring or something like, the tie down stakes for the docks or whatever could maybe be housed in that structure, simply something specific to the use of the property there, so.
And so, yeah, and considering that, I really don't see necessarily a purpose then for the building, to store life jackets or preserve if it's going to be inside. People would not have access to it. And just the other thing would be, I believe if you put a structure on a lot, the primary structure, that would become the primary structure. So the setback would have to be at least 100 feet. So.
That, again, I'd have to defer to Angie on that. I know the accessory structures can be closer to the water.
That is correct.
But I don't know how that would be ruled.
Yeah,
so.
But you have to have a primary in order to have an accessory.
Yeah, and again, that's not like hard written in stone that, hey, we have to have that structure. Again, that was kind of something, the verbiage that came into play when we were writing this. And again, I could see a use being put to it. But again, that would be something that on a case by case, when the DA is written, if planning commission or yourselves decided, hey, an accessory structure is not, applicable in this approval, then that could be eliminated as part of the DA as it's written. So.
Yeah. And Mr. Leggett, don't get me wrong. I want you to see this applied across the county. And so I want to look at, what can happen under these scenarios. Putting that building in there on the 10 acres too makes it an attractive place also for misbehavior when people aren't watching. And I'd hate to see vandalism, arson going on down there, mischief going on down there, and it becomes a magnet for that. By all means, I highly support the passive use, the walking, the jogging, the biking, the cross-country skiing. I think that fishing from the shore, I think that's all great.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. And again, that's certainly what we're trying to achieve here is utilization, of this resource. And again, we just feel that on a case by case, that if you were able to modify the ordinance to allow that to be looked at in these scenarios, it would make a lot of sense for everybody, the residents around. So thank you.
I could see one plus for a small structure like that is you could put security system in to monitor the dock, the area too.
Because you could do that on a pole.
You could, depending on what you get. I know, this is just on a personal note. We stayed at a small resort and they actually had a little building like that, just kind of for that purpose. You could run to it and it was kind of a safety. That was their reason for doing it. It's just, if something would happen and nobody would have anything, they could. Any other comments for Mr. Leggett at this time? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else here wishing to speak? Please come up to the microphone.
Can I make one additional comment?
Yeah, why don't you come up to the microphone? And that way we get you on the record.
I have to say I understand the applicant and subdivider's intent to solve a problem. I would reiterate my concern, however, that it applies countywide to all lakes, all rivers, and if you change the ordinance to say that controlled access is allowed, then it's allowed. When it goes through the process you made through the subdivision agreement, talk about the terms. Can you have a fishing pier? Can you have a dock? Can you have slips? Whatever kind of thing that you require. But the underlying allowance is that it's an allowed use. And that's the concern that I have. I really think that if there's a need for this kind of thing, a more level and balanced way would be through a conditional use. And the language and intent of that, it allows property owners to apply for certain land uses. In this case, it would be controlled access to serve non-riparian lots. And while not automatically allowed in a particular zone district, may, under some circumstances, be allowed if conditions can reasonably mitigate the impacts associated with the intended use. So I think, if you approve it, it's basically carte blanche. They're allowed on any property in any zone district along the rivers and shores. I think we need to look more broadly in the long-term impacts of this ordinance amendment. Thank you.
Angie, if I can ask, could you maybe add clarification whether it's conditional use or an ordinance change, if the procedures still require us to go through the steps on both?
Yes, Mr. Chair, so I can maybe I'll work from the beginning to the start of the conversations or questions to the end. So in terms of the motorized access versus golf carts, et cetera, that would be worked out during the subdivision agreement or the platting process. We think about a couple of examples, one on Lake Coronis where it's a really steep bluff, and in order to get down there, it would be reasonable to expect somebody to need a motorized vehicle to get down there, whereas this property would likely be a little bit different. So that would be handled again during the subdivision process. So that would be a case-by-case basis. The ordinance as proposed would not prohibit that.
Angie, excuse me, but then the ordinance would not also prohibit snowmobiles or SCR ATVs, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Persky, that's correct, unless you would want to modify the language. And next, just a point of clarification, and maybe Mr. Leggett was just using this as an example. And while I fully support youth fishing teams, as my son is on one, the way the ordinance is written, it's only for owners of the lots. So I just want, I guess, Mr. Leggett to understand and you all to understand that the way it's written wouldn't allow a team to come out and use it. The next item that was discussed, and Jennifer just kind of messaged me to suggest this too, the subdivision agreement that the board agreed to on phase 1 for Majestic Woods did allow for controlled access if this ordinance passes. So that would not be we would not be going back on that one. And so just to kind of understand that point, and to Commissioner Clark's point, in terms of when would this happen? When would somebody ask for controlled access? So you're almost always going to see it for a new development. In theory, you could see it for an existing development, but again, it would take an amendment to the subdivision agreement, which is really hard because you need all the owners, all the signs and heirs, mortgagees. That's a significant process typically. So I wouldn't anticipate seeing that, but it could happen the way the ordinance is proposed. The subdivision or the ordinance also does allow for structures, as was stated and discussed. 150 square foot structure is considered water oriented, and that can be located up to 10 feet from, in this case, 10 feet from the river. Natural environment lakes or certain trout streams, it's 20 feet. So you could also prohibit it if you wanted to. And in terms of conditional use permit or just held during the public hearing process for a plat is your choice. Jennifer and I talked a little bit about that yesterday. You could incorporate the language suggested by Mike Rozeski and have it be a conditional use. Somewhat redundant because the same public process happens, and actually the plat process, you notice everyone within a half a mile, whereas a conditional use is everyone within a quarter of a mile. So you could do it that way. It would really just result in being an additional fee for the property owner. The process would still have to be public hearing, opportunity for people to comment, agreed upon language, etc. Did I
think we got
cover everything?
Commissioner Clark.
I do have one more question. I believe through all of this that I'm hearing you say that somebody looking to do this, a subdivision looking to do this, would need to go through the process. So this may go back to, again, to Mr. Rizicki's raising of, red flags or unintended consequences. So if they're going to go through the process, should it be saying is allowed or may be allowed? Is kind of sounds like it's just automatic as opposed to going through a process, as opposed to being permissive if it gets approval. So I guess that would be a question I'd have.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Clark, you definitely could make that change. We could also incorporate the conditional use permit standard and or not include it and include some of the language that Mike proposed in terms of adding the may, which is, the permissive.
And Mr. Chair, and Ms. Berg, the reason why I was raising it is just the way it's currently written. For somebody who doesn't know about our processes, they may think that, oh, I don't have to do anything. I can just go do this. And I know that you all would raise that up, but for other residents and citizens, they might say, wait a minute, what's this all about? That's why I'm raising it.
Commissioner Persky.
Mr. Chair, I agree somewhat with what Commissioner Clark is saying and also with what Mr. Rizicki is saying, and also maybe some way of having a compromise would be is what about going with permissive language that incorporates the passive use, and then any type of structure or any other changes beyond that would then require the CUP. So then they could come in and have something specific as what they want to do. It could be larger than that size of building, and it might make sense. But then again, see, we've already put the restriction that it can be no larger than that size. So a CUP would allow them to do even more than what's on the proposed amendment change.
But is that really what you'd want?
Well, that's it. That way you can do it by a case-by-case basis.
Well, this...
Yeah. Whereas otherwise this way, it's blanket, and they can automatically put a structure down there, and they can automatically put a dock down there. Whereas if we change it so that it's passive, then we say, okay, yes, you can go ahead.
Well, it says maybe, one structure may be allowed. So already it can be conditioned by the Planning Commission, the county board. It's already says may. It doesn't say they will be allowed.
Right, on the structure part. So the reason why I was asking is that first line and the underlined when it says is allowed. It seems like that maybe should say may be allowed, mostly because there is a process. They're going to go through it. But I agree with you, Mr. Chair. It does say that it may be allowed. It doesn't guarantee it will be allowed.
Plus it's small enough, that you don't want to all of a sudden a living quarter.
Angie, question would be is then if on the agreement, then would there be any type of place for the public to have input on that then? If it's going to be in the development agreement?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Persky, we have so few plats that come in front of you now, but yes, the subdivision agreement is drafted and reviewed by the Platting Committee and then the Planning Commission and ultimately the County Board. So not only is the public process to comment on what the plat looks like, the layout of the lots, but it's also the staff conditions or recommendations. It's a subdivision agreement terms. So you're not, it's very clear that the public process would be had. It's just whether or not you want to add the additional conditional use permit step. Legally, you could say no just as easy under the subdivision agreement as you could if you made it a conditional use permit. So I won't worry about that.
Okay, so we'll maybe move on with the public hearing. I think there's another gentleman that would like to speak. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name's Travis Benoit, 9965 Ferry Point Place, Rice, Minnesota. I'm a partner in Logistics Development. So in Ferry Point, we own a pretty similar situation to this. Ours actually has a boat landing, but I own 1/28 of shared access on Ferry Point. And it's it's a really good thing for our development. The neighbors all get together, we take care of it, we trim the trees, we We're all proud of it. It's a really good spot for the community. A bunch of people, or for the neighborhood. About half of the people in Ferry Point don't live on the water. So an example would be if, Steve and his family wants to pick up your family, meet us at the Ferry Point Landing. You can get picked up, you enjoy a day on the river, and you can come back. It's just a super easy way to access the river. The biggest thing Steve and I are trying to do is take 10 acres of land that we think it would be a shame to live in our area and not be able to walk your dog or walk your kids or enjoy the beautiful land. Steve and I just walked it. It's amazing. There's walnut trees that are 100 feet tall or whatever. It's a beautiful piece of land. And we're not looking to build. It seems like we're a little hung up on a building. We don't even want a building. That's not our intention. Our intention is a walking trail and a way for people to use the river. That's what we're after.
Thank you. Commissioner Persky?
Hearing that testimony, that's why, again, if we just go with the passive use, I think that satisfies what they want to do and leave everything else up to a CUP or into an agreement.
But like Angie said, they kind of be the one in the same scenario. It has to go through the process.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, so is there anyone else here wishing to speak on this at this public hearing? Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else? Not seeing anyone. I'll close the public hearing for discussion by the board. Okay. And do you have anything to add? Otherwise, we'll.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think you just need to look at the proposal, the underlying proposal. I heard from Commissioner Clark that we could incorporate some language about may be allowed, and then we would just maybe take that, and if you all agree to that change, we would incorporate that, and then make a decision on the conditional use permit and also the structure issue if you want to strike that last sentence where it would then be something that we would ask them during the development proposal. Would it be, are you proposing a structure, and then that would be evaluated during that time?
So if you eliminated that last sentence, they could propose it, and
right.
then it would be up to the planning committee, the planning commission, and ultimately us to allow it if they would put it on there.
Correct.
Okay. So, Mr. Persky, I know
Mr. Chair,
pushing this envelope. If we took that out and put some passive language
well,
in
then we would take out the size of the structure and the dock, correct?
No.
That last sentence, just the
last sentence. One structure may be allowed not to exceed 150 square feet.
Okay, my point would be you're being too restrictive then.
Okay, so then leave it in, just change is allowed to may be allowed?
A structure, yeah.
No, on the top.
No, on the top.
Structure
It
already
already
is may
says.
be allowed.
Yep. Yep. The last sentence still says one structure may.
The controlled access is right now, and it could be may be allowed.
I'll move that. I will move changing is on the first sentence to maybe, and then unless you're saying you want to remove that last sentence, keeping the remainder of it.
Either way, it has to get approved
Right, it's gotta get
through
approved.
multiple processes.
Exactly.
So, and the conditional use, I suppose the conditional use, you have a deadline on it, correct? Or conditional use could run with the land. So then it'd be one and the same, correct? If it was a conditional use versus changing this ordinance, they both would run with the property, correct?
So, Mr. Chair, if the ordinance isn't changed, a CUP isn't even an option.
Oh, okay.
So the ordinance would have to change and then decide, is it going to be held during, are you going to talk about it during the plat or a conditional use? If you look back to some planned unit developments or CICs, it's kind of all one and the same. The whole hearing kind of takes on everything. So again, I think you could require a CUP. I don't think it's necessary legally or to address the issues that you brought up.
Okay. So we have a motion with the one change. Do we have a second to that motion?
I can second that.
Okay. We got a second by Commissioner Lenzmeyer. Further discussion.
Mr. Chair, I guess, we're dealing with muddy waters on the shoreline here. And I guess I would rather have a little clarity about exactly how this would go. And I don't see an element of pressure to get it done this meeting. So I think we could clean that up. If we want to think the horse is dead and not beat it anymore, Lee, we could bring it back and get some clarification on the language. So,
You know, in some of these controversial proposals or things we have questions about, it isn't like this department needs more work, but we have, at some point, it might make sense to consider a subsequent review process. What's that what am I talking about? Go back after a proposal or a development plan has been in place for a while, and to see if the way things turned out is what we anticipated. And I don't I haven't thought this through completely. Well, I haven't thought through it at all, but I don't remember this board. Sorry to interrupt you, Joe. I don't remember this board ever going back and revisiting this stuff, but land use is never straightforward, and the lakes and streams and so forth tend to be controversial, but I didn't solve a damn thing in my discussion here.
No.
But I'm willing to approve it as is.
Okay, any further discussion? Commissioner Morgan, you got any? No? No. Okay, if not, we got a motion and a second to approve with the one change from is to may be allowed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
aye.
Roll call, Randy?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 4-1. Okay, thank
you.
you. Thanks everyone for coming.
Could we take a break?
Yes, it's 10 o'clock. We'll take a 5-minute break. We'll call the meeting back to order. Next item is Public Works. Good morning, Jody.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jody Tite, County Engineer. My item today begins on packet page 173 in your agendas. I also today have with me Anna Gruber, the Sartell City Administrator, and she'll jump in when we start talking about the city's wishes. So just a little background, as you're aware, the county received some federal planning money through the St. Cloud APO to do a study on finishing a realignment to County Road 133 in the city of Sartell and Leasock Township. So today I just want to kind of go through the background of the study, some history that got us here, obviously the study's goals and objectives, give you an update, and then discuss where we are with alternatives and next steps. So I will just kind of quickly go through some of the background. So in 2004, it started, County Road 133. This is in Sartell. This is the intersection of Pinecone Road and 2nd Street South. Some of you know Blue Line is there, Walgreens. County Road 133 used to come along Pinecone Road and along 6th Street South. But because it was development driven, we started to realign County Road 133 to head to the west from Pinecone Road. And then a second project ended it at Tyson Road. And then, of course, we all know that the economy tanked a little bit, so development wasn't booming quite as much. But we did turn back these sections of roadway to the city of Sartell. So this study, we wanted to look at, should this alignment ever be finished? And if so, where should it go? So part of that push to get the county road to go in that direction is the whole Beltline study. It's been called the Ring Road, it's been called the Beltway, but basically something that goes around the St. Cloud area, so everybody who wants to drive through does not need to drive through downtown St. Cloud and to alleviate some of those traffic issues. So again, we got a grant through the St. Cloud APO to do the study, and we partnered with the city of Sartell, Leasock Township, and of course the APO to complete this study. So this section right up here is identified as part of that Beltline corridor. County Road 133 is a minor arterial. It serves freight, commuter traffic, ag traffic, and basically serves as a connection between I-94 west of St. Joseph and the Highway 10 corridor on the east side of Sartell. So this realignment started in 2004, but like I said, it stopped. And so we have a lot of property owners in the midst that are kind of left in the lurch in that gap area, and they want to know what to do. So we decided to move forward with this study to determine A, if we should even finish the realignment, and then B, if we should, where should it go? So again, the objectives of this study were to identify the alternatives, including do nothing. We wanted to engage with the key stakeholders, including those property owners that are directly impacted, and then of course the agencies that are involved. The city of Sartell would be a partner on any future road building, as this is part of their orderly annexation area, and Leasock Township has been involved as well. So we needed to look planning level view at the environmental, the social impacts, the economic impacts, obviously the cost to anything that we have. And then at the end of the study, we would be looking at an implementation plan and funding strategies for the road. So right now we have had 2 focus group meetings, and those focus groups consisted of directly impacted property owners. We've had 1 public open house where we brought several alternates just to get some feedback. We're hoping to wrap this up. The public process will be wrapped up by the end of October, and then we're hoping to finalize the study at the end of the calendar year. So as we looked at alternatives, or potential alternatives, we wanted to utilize a design speed of 45 miles an hour. The roads on each side of this missing segment are either 50 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour. There's a 30-mile-an-hour segment. We decided it would be a 2-lane roadway with wide shoulders. For initial planning, we wanted to use just a rural section with ditches as opposed to curb and gutter, but what we're using for a right-of-way width would accommodate either. And then, of course, the city wants to build those connections to its multi-use trail network. We needed to look at existing properties and structures, whether they were homes, vacant structures, et cetera. And then we certainly, as part of the environmental aspect, needed to look at those wetland impacts. So this is just an example of that 2-lane undivided section with the separated bike trail that we'd be using. So initially, when we went to the first public open house, we had quite a few alternatives. So this right here is the roundabout that exists at County Road 133 and 19th Avenue that we built in 2014. As reference, this is at Pinecone Road and 2nd Street South intersection that I referenced before. Down here is Heritage Drive and Pinecone Road. And then this over here is what locals call 5 Points. It's County Road 4 and 133, where we're going to be building a roundabout next year. So these are all the alternatives that initially went forward. So based on plating that's already taken place in the city of Sartell and that development that was imminent, we did eliminate these three alternates that went to the west side of 19th Avenue. Then we also eliminated this blue alignment here because of how it would intersect with 19th Avenue, in addition to taking out a home. And then this, I'll call it turquoise, aquamarine color alternative was eliminated because of the proximity of the intersection with 19th Avenue to that roundabout that was built at 19th Avenue and County Road 133. Excuse me. So these were the alternatives that we brought back to the general public. And the green one is the do nothing alternate, where we use the existing roadways that are in place. So that public engagement, we basically took a survey. It was not a vote. It was just a survey of what the general public who attended this meeting thought of all of those alternates. 5 was the strongly support. Excuse me. And 0 or 1 is strongly oppose. Now keep in mind, most of these people that were at the meeting were people who either lived along 2nd Street South that's already been built to the west of Pinecone, or those properties in between. And so based on just that public opinion from that open house, alternative D, or the do nothing, use existing routes, was the preferred alternative. So we do have an overall criteria in addition to the public input, which you see is last. We wanted to look at travel, the mobility through the area. If this is going to be part of the overall Beltline concept, we need to minimize access onto the route. We need to perhaps provide congestion relief to the existing routes, and again, have that continuity for regional routes. We, of course, looked at environmental aspects, mainly wetland impacts, and then muck soils, or those ponded type soils. And we wanted to look at the number of parcel owners that were impacted. Of course, overall cost is the cost of what the proposal is, in addition to the long-term system preservation costs, and like I mentioned earlier, public input. So we have ranging from poor to good, and everything in between. Each of those alternates was given a ranking. And based on these rankings, alternative C, which is one of the realignments, and alternative D, which is the do nothing alternate, scored the top 2 scores. And so that's what we moved forward with to the second focus group meeting, excuse me. So as you can see, we eliminated this red route. You can see the significant wetland impacts for both the red and the gold route. And this is alternate C with a new connection from 6th Street. And of course, alternate D is using the existing routes. So alternate C does provide that better mobility and congestion relief to those existing routes, primarily this stretch of Pinecone Road and this stretch of 6th Street South. And of course, this intersection that we did hear a lot of complaints about for freight and ag traffic and delays. We felt it provided, of all the alternates, this does provide that continuity that we were looking for. And then with the new alignment, you can do a better job of managing access. You don't inherit those accesses. It does, however, impact existing properties and homes. Homes that did not have a road going by it before, the road alignment will go by it, and obviously has a much higher cost than using the existing routes. So if alternate C would be the ultimate outcome of this study, And we assured the property owners of this as well, because we've done no detailed survey, we've done no soil borings. There might be slight tweaks to those alignments, and it might not even be one of these, but this is just showing you some examples of how that alternate could be modified once we do that additional engineering analysis. And we may find a property owner who wants to move, and that would be a much better option to have a willing seller as opposed to having to fight someone through the eminent domain process. Alternative D, of course, like I said, is the do nothing or use the existing route. It certainly is much lower cost than alternative C. There are no immediate impacts to existing properties or homes because we would be using the existing route at this point. We don't have that access control that we would like to have, particularly along Pinecone Road. Along 6th Street South, it's not quite so bad. We don't have that additional route to provide congestion relief. This extension of 2nd Street South may still take place at some point in the future, but it would be the city that did it, and it would be a city route, so we would have no control over whether that had access all over the place or just some access. But it would be completely up to the city. So if C is selected, we would have to bring 6th Street South in here, but we'd still have to provide access to some homes here. There is a trail that was just built that would need to be rerouted, and then we would need to start securing that right of way. Or for instance, once this alignment was identified and formally adopted and approved, if a property owner wanted to sell, we would have to almost immediately begin those discussions. Commissioner Persky?
Yeah, Jody, that articulation with 6th Street, would that be a stop sign on 6th Street?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 6th Street would have a stop sign, and then County Road 133 would be the through route. Again, if we identified this, we would want to start that design in the event a property owner was ready to sell. So that's when we would know what those exact impacts would be for the property owners. Now, if we use the do nothing alternate, we would have to look at potential access closures or modifications, and we would have to work with the property owners in the event that access spacing became a hindrance on this stretch. We would have to pay back about $250,000 to $270,000 in state aid money. That's a prorated amount based over a 25-year lifespan for this section of 2nd Street South that the county used their state aid funding to do that. Now, we could look at a future swap. Nothing is definite, but we could ask the city to take back this stretch of road then if we were going to do the do nothing, but because it's a state aid route, the city would need to approve that. And likely what would happen with that is they would ask us to take these sections of roadway back. So our next steps today, we wanted to know how the board felt about either of these options. The project management team will be meeting in early October. And again, the project management team has city, county, township, and APO representatives with our consultant that's working on it. And we want to identify the locally supported alternative that we can bring forth to the second full public open house that we would have in late October. Now, while we're at this part and before I'm asking the board if they have an immediate preference, I want to ask Anna Gruber to come up to talk about the city council discussed this at a workshop, and she can give you the city's opinion on that.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Jody. Thanks for having me this morning. I just thought I would help share the city council perspective and articulate their concerns regarding this route. Obviously, from the city perspective, as you can imagine, we have grave concerns with using Pinecone as an option as the through route and not completing this connection. Both from an APO perspective for the Beltway, it's crucial that this would be completed primarily for truck traffic and the ag traffic that Jody discussed. If you've been through Sartell as of late, traffic is horrendous on Pinecone. Obviously, that's related to the County Road 1 project, not a long-term thing that we'll deal with, but our concern is that if we are using that as the main beltway, it will become equally as congested with that truck traffic and ag traffic over time, and using that route, Pinecone, as our primary road would not be sufficient long-term. Of course, that has development impacts. Jody covered all of that. We recognize the importance of the homeowners there. But this has been a planned route for a significant amount of time for anybody who's had some exposure to the APO Beltway discussions. So we would strongly encourage and appreciate support from the county board in alternative C in some fashion. Where that route goes as we begin the design phase, we'd have to work with the county in determining that, but really ensuring that we keep that traffic off of our local Pinecone Road, which is a main thoroughfare in Sartell. Any questions before I turn it back over to Jody?
Thanks for being here. This doesn't impact what needs to be done in the near future. And Joe, I'm sorry I haven't asked you this question. Is the APO relooking at how far north the Beltway should be? Because otherwise it's already turning into the same problem we have right now going through St. Cloud. So I don't even necessarily need to know that for today, but part of me is like, okay, we need this for the short and medium term, but long term, I really think we got to relook at this because it's going through town.
Commissioner Persky?
Yeah, I can respond to that, Cheryl. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is that 133 heading to the east goes to County Road 29 on the other side, which is Benton County, and that's the river crossing. So we don't anticipate any river crossing north of that for at least our lifetimes, I don't think. The MnDOT, we're also working on the South River crossing, and that's quite an issue. So, I mean, we've got the Rice Bridge, and now we have the Sartell Bridge. So this will be the river crossing.
Right.
And that Beltway coming from Highway 23 to the north side of Sauk Rapids, the traffic's coming this direction.
I'm just pointing out
Okay.
that it might not be far enough.
Yeah.
Because Sartell's been growing.
And to your point, right.
But we need, I just was curious, so.
As we've seen
We
all
do
the
need it.
expansion in Sartell, Commissioner Clark, yes, it would be nice if that bridge was further north, but it's
It's a
not.
great bridge, though.
Yeah,
I use it all the
And
time.
Commissioner Lensmeyer, you've seen this for a couple of decades.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I see the opportunity that I will mightily resist to get in an argument with the Sartell City Council. So from your perspective, what would be their preferred alternative?
Alternative C in some fashion, what that direct route is, just as long as there's a connection. And to your point, Commissioner Clark, I think the immediate is that connection, and it likely, Commissioner Persky pointed out, it likely is going to be the long term until there'd be another bridge, which won't even be in my lifetime, probably. So,
and I recognize that, Mr. Chair and Ms. Gruber, in part because, I mean, the one that's supposed to be going through the south part of St. Cloud has been talked about for most of my lifetime. I didn't know about it because I didn't live here yet, and I've lived here for 34 years. So, I mean, I recognize we've got to work with what we've got.
Yeah.
Well, Sartell's been an adventure because of their growth rate.
Right.
So this isn't certainly a new discussion here. One aspect of this that doesn't, we talk a lot about cost, about everything, but, and I don't suggest we stop the ship and do it here, but I'd be interested in one of these discussions somewhere along the line to talk safety, because there's various designs have various advantages and disadvantages in terms of safety, but we get hung up on local objections, et cetera, et cetera. But whatever way the city prefers, I'll certainly concur. And, that way if you screw up, it's your fault.
All right.
If I could just add one more comment to Commissioner Clark's question regarding the Beltway. One of the things that's been discussed at the APO TAC level is that the Beltway can't be so far out that people don't use it. Even if it's a little bit out of the way, but it's not extremely far out, then we know people will still use it because it's quicker. And I know that at least one council member brought that up at the first open house as well. She said, shouldn't we be looking further out just to truly solve this? And the one thing about Pinecone Road and the proposed alternate C is it would split some of that traffic because some of Pinecone Road goes north, of course, and some of it heads east toward that Sartell Bridge. And we could certainly look at some restriping there and some potential lower cost work to be able to accommodate some additional traffic.
And I'll put a really good fly in the ointment here. If you went back to that other page, coming off of 5 points and going up, to me almost makes more sense than this. Because if I remember right, last week when I was on 133, did that parcels on the south side just get sold by the first roundabout? I thought there was a sold sign on there. So you can imagine that's going to be a housing development, I presume. I mean, when I went into Sartell, that was 10 to 8 in the morning. The traffic was backed up to that roundabout, getting to County Road 4 and 33. It was insane. I couldn't believe how, I mean, I know roundabout or anything will probably ease that a little bit, but it's already that congested. And now if that lot gets built, you're gonna have more homes, they're gonna wanna get on there.
I will add that this summer has been an anomaly to highlight the worst parts of traffic in the Sartell area. Sorry, Anna. We partnered with the city to reconstruct County Road 1 along the river, but the city is also reconstructing 19th Avenue here, and the detour comes this way. So I am well aware of the backups in the morning in this direction and the backups in the afternoon during those typical commute hours. I'm very aware of those. So that has added more traffic, and the roundabout will ease that, but so will having 19th Avenue completely reconstructed and having County Road 1 done.
I just think long term, that's all going to get developed. You know, now that County Road 133 is going to be a County Road 120.
Yep.
And Mr. Chair,
situation
that actually kind of goes back to my point. I feel really bad not bringing up that some of our most dangerous, highly used, and expensive changes are within 2 or 3 miles of here, right? Where we're sitting right now. Highway 15 used to be pretty easy. We've got some challenges, particularly at Division and 2nd. We've got problems on Highway 10. We have challenges going through on Highway 23 through this region. And those are really expensive and difficult things to fix. And I'm hoping we can avoid doing that up in Sartell. Otherwise, it's just going to be another thing like this.
Commissioner, I just thought I'd point out, because I hear your point, and we as a committee discussed that in depth. The red and the orange and the yellow, so you can kind of see the start of Northern Meadows near the proposed roundabout for County Road 4 or 5 points there. They actually, as we are going through this process, have already begun the platting for phase 2. Which is part of why
So that's that land.
Yes, exactly. So we had the same thought as you, and that's how those routes got put on there, was that, hey, maybe we should be going around further. We were on the same exact wavelength. Unfortunately, there is another development plan there, so it would make it significantly more difficult to go through that route. And so that's where we came back to Route C.
And I know that development, I think, is a cul-de-sac now, but is there potential through street that would go through to, if the red was the alternate route?
The intent is for it to be a through street that goes through. So it would essentially...
But some of the lots would be where that red line is right now.
Yes. Right now, where it is platted, that red line would go right through that second phase of Northern Meadows being proposed by Infinity Homes.
Okay.
So that took away that route option for both the orange and the red, and a little bit of the yellow became a challenge as well. So that is how we landed back at C. But to agree with you, it would likely, preferably, be some version of both of yours recommendations to not go right through Sartell. But given what we have right now and made available to us, this alternative C is the best option.
Now to really go off the rails here, not that meeting's long enough already, but that property on 4 on the northwest corner there, or the west corner, what if 133 went around the northwest side of that and hooked up to the red beyond the new platted property? Would that in the future be a workable? It's probably a
yeah, actually, we did discuss that a little bit. preferably at some point, and I know this is the main focus for you guys as well, is Town Line Road. If you could get to a better condition of Town Line. Right now, Town Line is not drivable to be using it as a through route, but getting to Town Line Road, that's actually our compost site right there that you can kind of see the compost piles there. And then up to, I believe that's First, which connects into the red there. Unfortunately, Town Line is not in a condition that we could use it to that in that way. And then also, in addition to that, Second Street, you can kind of see the wetland concerns. Getting Second Street to connect all the way over to that red would be problematic as well. So we did discuss that as well, especially the focus that all of us have on the improvements to Town Line.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking that I know 133 curves over to 4. If where the curve was, if you shot straight up, you'd still be on the east side of your compost or whatever that Town Line Road is. But just a thought. Okay.
Jody, can you live with the preferred alternative that Sartell seems to support?
Yes, I do think it would provide those objectives that we were looking for long-term for that traffic split, I guess, for lack of a better term, to try and provide some congestion relief. Of course, the easy route for me would be to say, let's just use the existing routes and do nothing because that costs less in the short term. But long-term, somebody someday is going to say, who on earth was it that said we could just live with this? So,
hell did they do that? I've heard
so
that.
I think as a whole, the project management team prefers some version of alternative C. But we understand that we also answer to elected bodies. So we want to make sure if we go forward with that to a public open house, that we have the support of both the county board and the city council, who would likely be partnering on this roadway project at some point in the future.
So you need a motion from us to approve the alternate.
Yes, please.
And I think keeping in the back of your mind that if that corridor is still open at some point in the future, then maybe, because you can always eliminate this again and go up.
And the other, it might be not just an or, but also an and as development occurs. But we have been working with Senator Howe, and we're part of a joint powers agreement with all of the entities along Town Line Road. So we are hopeful that that project, if the legislature would either come back for a special session or when they do reconvene in 2023, that project rises to the top again, and there is a dedicated funding amount mentioned in a bill for that road. And as a side note, that joint powers agreement only has us as the contract administrator, no direct hard costs.
Okay, can we get a motion maybe?
I'll make that motion to
get a motion by
the recommended
alternate
route.
Yeah.
And with a comment, Jody, or a question, Jody, as far as costs going through that wetland and the materials between wetland mitigation and, was there obviously a significant cost as well?
So for most of the alternates, and I can get back to alternate C here so we can look at that a little bit more directly, there are minor impacts, and that's why we talked about, we do need to do some final tweaking, and that would be done after a little bit more detailed engineering analysis on it, and then we could work with those property owners. But yes, there would be wetland impacts that we would have to pay for as it's shown now. So we would have to purchase those wetland credits as well as build through or alongside a wetland.
Okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the alternative route, specify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
I have one very quick miscellaneous item. I just want to remind the county board that the Transportation Alliance is sponsoring a candidate forum on Friday, October 14th at the Kelly Inn over lunch from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Local, state legislative candidates have all been invited to be there. Obviously, the topic will be transportation, and that's what we'll be talking to all those candidates about. But I will follow up with an email reminder to all of you, and you can let me know if you want me to get you signed up to attend that.
Sounds good.
Where?
It's at the Kelly Inn here in downtown. next
Okay.
Friday, or not next Friday, Friday, October 14th, excuse me.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have the Sheriff's Department. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Morning.
I want to just take a quick minute to thank you for the opportunity to come up here and just wanted to give you an update on some of our grant-funded positions since I've taken over as sheriff, just give you some updates. As you know, when I became sheriff, I guess I felt there were several areas that we had some gaps in services and how we responded to the community and that type of thing. So these positions kind of cover a myriad of things. There's some enforcement stuff, there's some rehabilitation stuff, and there's some community engagement stuff. And I'm just going to go through the different positions that we've obtained since I became sheriff. So the first one is a U.S. Department of Justice Community-Oriented Policing Grant, otherwise known as COPS. And what this is a 4-year award from the U.S. Department of Justice, applied for this grant to cover the cost of a deputy, which is specifically assigned as a school resource officer. I felt that we did not have enough officers within the school to kind of bridge that gap between the youth and law enforcement and those relationships. So went ahead and applied for this grant, and we were given it. And this particular deputy is assigned to Melrose and Sauk Center, which includes the Melrose Area Learning Center. And we're just beginning the 3rd year of this grant, which is a 4-year grant. Some key points on this particular grant. Deputy is divided between all the schools, so he does make stops in the elementary schools, the middle schools and the high schools, and like I said, the Area Learning Center in the West End there. He's required to attend certain events, not just the school day, but football games or sporting events, dances, to make himself available to the parents who usually attend some of those sporting events. If they have any questions or concerns, they can bring it to that particular deputy. My expectation of the school resource officer is primarily to build relationships with the faculty, students, and parents. And the enforcement side of it's kind of the secondary thing. I mean, we're always the police, but the big thing is to try and build those relationships with our future citizens of our county. Both the school districts that this officer is serving is a little more than 1,100 students, and the deputy also provides safety planning and training. We've done some active shooter training, some stop the bleed training is coming up, I believe. We give some talks and demos, sometimes related to law enforcement topics, sometimes not. And then obviously providing law enforcement services and community engagement. The deputies have established, obviously, he's been in there for 3 years, the same officer. He's definitely developed some relationships with the student body, to the point that they do feel comfortable talking to him. A couple of examples that are given just this past spring, we had 2 different criminal sexual conduct or assault type complaints that, according to the students, they would have never approached a local city officer or a sheriff's deputy had they not had that officer in the school and made those relationships and felt comfortable enough coming forward. And of course, then we were able to investigate those. Mentoring and guidance, there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that is de-escalation, if you would, and we're teaching those kids how to kind of resolve those things within the schools without leading to fights and physical violence. And I hear about that from the superintendents on both sides, just the officers' demeanor and just being able to talk people down, and then teaching those kids how to kind of talk about their problems instead of going right to violence. Another example also is a faculty member had some questions on a restraining order and openly admitted that they probably would have never called the sheriff's office or talked to an officer about it, but were seeking to get a restraining order. And because of that relationship with that officer and being comfortable with the school resource officer, felt okay asking questions and getting the guidance that they were seeking. The next grant position is more of a recent one that we just entered into in this last year. It's our co-responder unit, which I'm sure you're well aware of. This was a approval from you guys and working with the Central Minnesota Mental Health Center. This occurred just this last February with the formation of the unit and the selection and assignment of the deputy. I have down that it was COVID money. I should stand corrected. It was actually American Rescue Plan funds that you allowed us to use, which is a designated use of that funding to do mental health and law enforcement. So the mental health professional and the deputy respond to in-progress mental health calls and further work on follow-up. Probably a majority of their work is actually follow-up because obviously there's just two of them and they can't work, although we'd like them to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They can't do that, but they do a lot of follow-up to other calls that the deputies are taking, talking to potential clients and making house calls and obtaining needed services. So in February of 2022 to about April of 2022, we had to form the unit, if you would, and get them the proper training. The deputy had to be trained up, and of course the mental health worker had to be trained in kind of what occurs in the law enforcement world when you're riding along in a squad car. So in April of 2022, we became what I would call operational. And since April of 2022, and I will give you that I created this PowerPoint towards the end of July, so the numbers are probably even a little bit larger now that we've gone through August and most of September. But there was 52 days of service since late April of 2022. We had 61 new contacts, as you can see, 13 in-person follow-ups and 193 follow-ups. We have people that obviously we call them high utilizers, whether they use the jail facility. We have people that sometimes end up in booking, probably more so because of mental related behavioral health calls, but they end up in the emergency room, they end up in our jail, they end up taking up services of numerous different agencies. The idea behind this whole co-responder unit was to kind of proactively get to those people on the front end so that we didn't have to necessarily get them the necessary services and connect them with the right people at the back end. We do have, for instance, a party out on the west end, probably calls 911 31 times a day, all hours of the day and night, and talks about suicide. Is usually not necessarily an active threat, but it's something that we still have to respond to, obviously. It ties up dispatcher time. We've been able to knock that down because of this co-responder unit. Not saying they still don't call, but it's not 31 times a day, and the deputies aren't having to respond halfway across the county at this point because we were able to connect that person with some services. They had a bad experience many years ago with a crisis center. We were able to bring them in and introduce them to the crisis center again and in the new staff, and they felt more comfortable in being able to reach out. The next particular grant is something that we're doing inside our jail. And when I talked about rehabilitation or recidivism, this is one of the ideas or the programs to try and cut down on hopefully future generations ending up in our facilities. So we were actually asked by the Minnesota Department of Health, who is teaming up with Hennepin County Sheriff's Office and some school districts down in the cities to also enact this program in our jail. And so it seemed like a win-win. So we're working with the District 742, Social Services, obviously, and then the Minnesota Department of Health and our Sheriff's Office to have a 3-year grant that this particular staff member teaches a parenting inside-out program is what it's called. This particular grant had terrible timing because it kind of started when COVID was at its height with us. We did not have programs going on within the jail because of that. We didn't have outside entities coming in, and also we had a kind of reduced inmate population. So that particular grant didn't start necessarily on schedule. That's why it says it may be extended. They may be extending it to actually get 3 total years out of it to make up for the time that was void during the COVID. So this particular staff member went to some special training to be able to teach this particular class, delivers proper parenting skills to the inmates, but also teaches how them to successfully be parents while they're incarcerated. Part of that is part of the ACEs, which I'm sure you've heard before with the children, just trying to reduce some of that trauma and incorporate some other stuff that allows them to be a little more connected with their family even while they're incarcerated, to kind of reduce that. A couple of the issues that we've had, obviously, as you know, and we're not immune to the other, as well as the other 86 or counties in the state. We have jail staffing issues, which have caused us to have mandatory lockdowns more frequently than we'd like and more frequently than we need to have. But because of that, we obviously can't have the inmates out for the programming, so the program doesn't always necessarily get to be delivered on the schedule that it's supposed to be. Couple key points to this. The program began in June of 2021. We've had 5 classes. As you can see, they take 12 2 to 3 hour sessions. The classes have ranged from anywhere from 2 to 9 people, and it's strictly voluntary. We've had 25 people go through the class. 9 have passed, 3 more were set to, and then since this time, I believe a couple more have actually passed. And once they've started the class, if they don't pass or they decide to drop out, or because again it's voluntary, they can always come back in. And we've had some people that have that thought this was a better option and to get established with the program, if you would. So our problem at the county jail system with delivering any kind of successful programs is just the time that we have with the inmates. We're not the Department of Corrections. We can only house people so long. So anything we have to do has got to be kind of quick and intense, and has to have a willing partner from the inmate side that wants to partake. Excuse me. The next program, which I think we've seen a lot of huge success, I find this to be more along the angle of the community engagement, but it is definitely delivering customer service to our, unfortunately, to our victims of crime. Not always even victims of crime. We work with families of the fatal car accidents, of death scenes, things like that also. But this is a grant-funded position through the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Victims Coordinations, and we have a victims assistance coordinator embedded within our investigative unit at the sheriff's office. This position, I saw definitely, and I was probably just as guilty of it when I was on patrol. You take a call from somebody and you kind of walk away because that's our life, and we move on to the next call, and next thing you know, it's 4 days later, and you've never really gotten back to that victim that might have had their car stolen, or their bobcat stolen, or their mailbox just smashed in the middle of the night or whatever. For some people, that can be the most serious of crimes because they've never been the victim of a crime. So what we figured out was that, nobody's really sometimes getting back to these people unless it was some major crime, and really all the victims deserve to have some type of follow-up on where the system is. There's also obviously kind of thanks to TV, there's some misnomers that if a crime happens, that we'll catch somebody within an hour, and using all the kinds of DNA and CSI type stuff that is on TV that sometimes doesn't exist. And so, we have to kind of school them, or this particular position has to educate them on how the system really works. So, as I said, this is assigned to our investigative division to be tied in the most to the call logs, I guess, or the major crimes. This particular grant did not start on time either, not because of anything we did. We were ready to roll, but the federal system, the IT side of it, the computer was not working for almost up to 3 months for them to fix that before that we could accept the actual award. So we began this in March of 2021. This is a 3-year grant. As you can see, we've had 719 total victims that are served, March 21 to December of 21 and January 22 to present when I did this presentation, which was late July that I put this together. And what this does is this position allows for regular contact with the victims. They're better informed, they understand the process and have more trust in our office. If there is a prosecution, this particular person can do a soft handoff to the county attorney's office victim coordinator and keep them within the system and keep them apprised of everything that's going on. It's also led us to better relationships than we already had with our, like say, Anna Marie's and Sexual Assault Center, because our person works directly with that particular person. So here's just, I guess, a success example. Last year in 2021, we did have a victim of basically their vehicle was damaged. About $3,000. The insurance company would not pay for the damage, and collection of the restitution seemed pretty fruitless based on the suspect that had done that. He didn't have the means to basically pay back the damage. So our victim assistance coordinator located a fund that would pay at least $2,500 to the victim for the damages. The company won't actually speak to victims directly or law enforcement, but will work with that particular victim services professional that has to vet that particular case. So had we not had that position and had she not known about those resources to reach out, this person would have been out $3,000, where in this case they were able to recoup $2,500, and which actually got them another vehicle, which then got them going back to work and that kind of stuff. But that wouldn't have happened without this position. Our last position that is grant funded is our State of Minnesota Office of Traffic Safety. It's a traffic safety officer / DUI grant, as we call it, or DUI officer, excuse me. This is a grant funded position through the Minnesota Office of Traffic Safety. That particular grant is awarded yearly, and we've gotten that grant. I clicked one slide too soon, but we've gotten that grant for the last 3 years. It's specifically to work on DUI and traffic enforcement. Unfortunately, Stearns County ranks in the top 10 of alcohol-related crashes and fatality accidents in the state of Minnesota. Some of that is not our fault. We have a large county and lots of county roadway, and there's a lot of people traveling and a large population. But you know, some of it can sometimes be prevented, and so the idea behind this is that a deputy would specifically work on traffic safety in various areas of the county. So. All wages compensation, the training is funded, and ongoing training is funded by the state in this particular position. As you can see, the first grant was awarded in 2021, and we're currently in our 3rd year. We began that on October 1st with Deputy Simon, who was assigned. He worked it for a year. Deputy Simon was in the top 10 for all DWI arrests in the state of Minnesota, and then also in the top 3 for all just traffic stops in general. So the success of getting the grant the next year is obviously dependent on whether you're working and using the grant to its fullest potential, which I would say that Deputy Simon definitely was. Upon his leaving it after a year, Deputy Youngkin was assigned, and he's almost coming up on his last, he's in his last week here, basically, before he rotates out. Deputies are allowed to continue it if they want, but they seem to find after a year of just doing traffic and not the other general patrol stuff, they want to rotate back. So, but Deputy Youngkin, also very successful from last year in October till when I did this presentation, when I put this together in late July, August, early August, he did 1,721 traffic stops, arrested 62 DWIs, and you can see the other stuff there. He's also in the top 10 for DUI arrests and in the top 5 for all stops. Both of our deputies have been recognized at several Minnesota Twins games. They'll have numerous officers come to be recognized before the game, stand out on the field as DUI All-Stars, and they've also been recognized by the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. So they're doing an excellent job. Doesn't, you know, it probably doesn't reflect sometimes in the numbers because the fatalities continue to happen, but hopefully, you know, with them out there, there's a little bit of a dent being made. So with that, I just wanted, like I said, I wanted to update you guys on that. I don't know if there's any questions on the positions. I will, like I always do, throw it that my door is open at my office. Feel free to call, text, stop in, email if you have questions on any of this or anything else. And I just want to thank you because these positions are obviously grant funded, and we couldn't move forward with these without your support. And these fill, like I said, a gap that I definitely saw when I came into office in 2019.
Well, thanks for that thorough report. I just have one question in regards to like statistics. So like with the last one, you know, with 2 different officers, has a county or has your department ever made like 4 quadrants and map, you know, is there a consistent area of the county that seems to have a higher number, whether it's DUIs, speeds, that type of thing?
We have and we haven't. We don't necessarily, you know, so like for instance, the DUI deputies, they will work primarily more the east end of the county. They do go out to the west end and we'll team up with the state patrol, maybe work Highway 71 or 94 or some of the county roads. But obviously the east end of the county has more population. So we're seeing more stuff here.
Okay.
It always kind of drives me nuts because we're ranked in the top 10 for fatal accidents, but some of them aren't, I mean, you know, they're not necessarily the county, you know, the interstate runs through here, and so we have crashes there that are state patrols, but they count anything, even if it's a rollover in the city of St. Cloud in Stearns County, as a county fatality, and so then I get the Star and Tribune calling me, asking me what I'm going to do about it, and so it's a team effort. But
Commissioner Morgan.
But being in the top 10, Stearns County is also in the top 10 just in population.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
No, it's
yeah.
a correlation. There's no doubt that I mean, I don't suspect we'll ever get to 0 or 1 or even in the top 5. You know, we were 7 when I came into office. We moved up to 6, and I don't know where we are this year. But you know, there was definitely and you know, COVID, nobody was necessarily working, school wasn't in session, there was more people at home, more people traveling. We did see a spike in traffic accidents and traffic fatalities because there's more people just on the move during COVID. So I'm hoping that number goes the other direction now that we're kind of getting back to work and things of that nature.
Well, good. Thank you, Commissioner Persky.
Yeah, just jail staff, anything we can do to help with that, you know, because I can understand you lose staff, so then the existing staff has to do more work, and it's spiraling down. Is there some way we can intervene with that? Do you see any light at all looking forward?
Well, no light at the end of the tunnel. We have several factors that play against us, and I'm constantly working with county admin and county HR to figure out recruiting. You know, everybody's recruiting for jail. We are about 15 short in the jail, which is taxing on our existing jail staff. We're looking at other counties, what they're doing. We're obviously talking financial things, incentives and stuff, but we're not there yet, what we can do with that. And I don't know that money always is the issue. I mean, some of it is, you know, we've had people leave us because they don't want to work nights and weekends. Well, I unfortunately have to run a jail nights and weekends, and you can go to UPS, for instance, and work for the same wages as our jail makes, but not have to deal with maybe the clientele, which sometimes, you know, our jail is definitely. They do a very good job, but they're not doctors or psychologists, and we have a lot of mental health in the jail that can be taxing on our staff because they're just not. That's not their forte, you know. So we are working on a lot of things, trying to compare with the surrounding states, trying to compare with other counties, but we're all kind of in the same boat right now. It's a workforce issue.
All right, thanks, Commissioner Clark.
Just really quickly, thank you and your staff for all the work you're doing, the things that you're talking about from the grant-funded opportunities, working with the community partners are really key. And yes, we need to keep working on that workforce issue, but really appreciate the work that you all are doing. So please pass that on for us.
I will. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Morgan?
Well, I'll move to accept the sheriff's report.
Second.
Do we need? Okay.
Do we need to? I don't know if we need to. We can.
You can call a vote if you want.
You can. Oh, we could. It says accept Stearns. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to accept the sheriff's report. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thanks.
Anybody need a break, or can we get Chad up here? All right. All right, next up, we have property services
Mr.
with
Chair, you
Chad.
mean a break before Chad?
Do you need a break?
All right.
Sorry, just trying to lighten it up, you know?
Okay.
Drainage
He did
has
hesitate, but
impact on people.
Just
Thank you,
kidding.
Commissioners. Good morning.
So appreciate you.
I have a brief just summary of a repair proposal we've been working on as staff for a number of years now. And I'll go through it briefly, but I do have copies of the repair proposal. It's much more detailed. It's in the agenda packet. So I can certainly back up and provide more detail if you wish. So for our viewing public, County Ditch 4 is split between St. Wendell and Avon Townships. A little bit of history. It is our oldest established ditch, 1898. And our first property owner notification of some issues came in 2017. And so we've really been kind of working with property owners, our engineers, and through our inspection process since then to kind of understand what the issues are and what in practicality could efficiently be done. In 2019, with the auditor's support, we did a reestablishment of records, which is just the engineering process that updates records with modern elevations, right-of-ways, things like that. We also were able to work with the DNR to declassify public water which when you're doing drainage is really helpful. It removes a barrier, kind of an administrative barrier. Myself and 8 or 9 of my coworkers actually entered the ditch and did some clean out in spring of 2021, and that's taking down deadfall, cutting down trees that had fallen in, allowing the ditch to flow better. And then last year, of course, with approval from this board, we did do some repair at the beginning of the ditch, which involved lowering a culvert and doing some excavation work. And then more recently, we had a property owner meeting where we invited all the property owners in the ditch system to come talk about the repair proposal. Commissioner Persky, I believe you were in attendance for that one as well. So it's a 2-part repair. And the reason we broke it up was we have a repair, which is excavation, and then we have vegetation, which is cutting down trees, basically. And because of the different nature, we thought we'd get 2 different types of vendors that would respond. So here's a map of where these 2 areas are and has some of our bid information. So the ditch flows from St. Wendell to Avon Township, and our tree removal is near 130th. And that's been kind of a problem spot for some of our property owners for a number of years, and alleviating that vegetation, which acts as a sponge. I know when we did our staff clean out, just with hand tools and physical labor, you know, the water's thigh deep, and 2 days later, it dries up. I mean, the vegetation has a dramatic impact on holding water. And then a repair at the end of the ditch to open up and alleviate some saturation from 365th to the end of our ditch. So this is what that 130th Avenue site in St. Wendell looks like. The picture on the left shows the heavy tree line. The picture on the right shows the culvert traveling west under 130th, and you can see before staff entered, this is what it looked like. And then when we left, we were able to cut back a lot of that, but you know, we still have some pretty large, mature swamp trees in there that are causing problems. And then we have our excavation toward the end of the ditch, which will just open up the ditch, remove some of the snarls, some of the vegetation, and really just increase and give this ditch an opportunity to flow like it's supposed to. Property owners down there have reported with our increased weather, rain patterns, and more severe amounts, they are getting some pretty heavy saturation there, and the ditch just isn't able to function like it could or should. So our vendor bid summary. The tree removal, our low bid was $6,215. The excavation was $10,800. That excavation, these are really aggressive prices. Both these bids are quite a bit lower than anything we would have estimated as staff. When you can excavate a ditch at $1.50 a linear foot, it may not sound like it, but relative to what is happening in other places of the state, that is a dramatically low bid. Additional costs might include staff and engineering costs. I'll also add, we had estimated as a staff group an additional $3,500 for excavator work to remove some of the debris from the tree removal. Because facilities recently bought a mini excavator and Kevin's willingness to share that with us, we were able to eliminate that, and that's work that we feel we can do as staff with existing equipment and existing staff. So that's another cost that we don't have to pass on to the property owners, because again, these bids are paid for through special assessments to the property owners that comprise the county ditch for drainage system. At this point, after 5 years of looking at this, working with numerous property owners, I can confidently say this is as efficient of a cost as I think we can come up with and still do something positive in the drainage. We've scaled back our proposal numerous times over the years to kind of get to this point. We understand a lot of property owners don't want to pay for this, of course, but there are some needs out there, and there are some property owners that are damaged because of the condition of the ditch. So with that, I'm happy to go into more detail. I'm happy to answer questions. before we get into a request for action.
Do you have any questions for Chad? Doesn't look like it.
All
Good job,
right.
Chad.
So then I would be looking for the Drainage Authority, comprised of our elected county commissioners, to approve repairs to County Ditch 4 and award contracts to the lowest vendor bids.
Okay, heard the request from Chad. Do we have a motion for such?
We can do that.
Thank you, Commissioner Lenzmeyer. Do we have a second?
A second.
Second from Commissioner Mergen. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate your
Chad.
support.
Everybody-
Mr. Chair, just really quickly, Chad, thank you for, I mean, you give us really good information. This can be kind of a hard thing to wrap one's head around at times, so really do appreciate it.
Our county ditches in St. Cloud are limited within your district, so I
But
do appreciate your support.
That is so true, but it's really important to understand. Actually, at our last AMC Education and Training Committee meeting, I brought up that perhaps ditch-related training for commissioners might be a useful thing, given how many ditches are on there.
I don't want to scare
Don't be
Mike, but
terribly-
nothing would make me happier
It
than to
actually
talk
is
about
really
ditches with you
important.
folks.
Right, I know.
Some
So,
of us
and
are quite
believe it or
aware of
not,
that.
everybody woke up more than they did with coffee. So,
I'll hang
like,
around
people
after the
are-
meeting if you want to do it right now.
Yeah, we actually, it's 28, I brought
The
it.
AMC sessions are only like half an hour.
No, actually, they're looking at an actual training. I know. They did talk about that, is it H2, is it over?
H2 Overviewers has been doing
Perhaps
presentations.
as well as like a legal or county viewpoint, something from them. But yeah, it's something that even if you think you know something about it before you're a commissioner, you probably don't. You just probably don't.
It's not on the job application usually.
But for most, compared to almost every other part of this, for most people becoming county commissioners.
No, I do appreciate your
this is a
support
new-
because I know it's not necessarily a focal point for your
Well, it ha-
constituents, but I
it has
appreciate
to-
it.
That's true, but it has to be for our residents, right? It's really
Oh,
important.
absolutely.
So if I don't know something about it, I could vote in a really stupid way, so.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thanks.
All right. We need a break.
That would be nice.
Okay.
Okay, now
We'll
we
take a
need a break.
5-minute break before we get into the next discussion.
Ditches are not a problem.
I hear him coming. Call the meeting back to order. Last item is administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, your one item under administration is to take some action on the budget, which is not your final action, but you are required by state law to adopt a resolution that adopts your preliminary levy and your preliminary expenditures. And so there is a resolution before you. This item, all of this starts on packet page 203. And this will, as I said, it's not your last action on the budget. We have from now until your last meeting of the year to make any changes to this proposed budget. Once you take action today, you can decrease the levy, but you cannot increase the levy. We will hold our Truth and Budgeting meeting on November 29th. So the public can formally make comments at that time. They can certainly make comments anytime before that in a number of ways, but that will be where we make a presentation of the budget and we take formal public comment. And then your last meeting of the year is planned for December 13th. So you would, at that time, need to adopt the final budget unless you wanted to schedule a meeting later than that. So that's where we are in the process. We've talked about the budget at a couple of meetings. There's a lot going on in this budget, I think. We're, as you know, we're using a fair amount of fund balance with this budget. We're keeping the debt service up at a certain level in anticipation of a major capital construction for a jail and justice center. We've got a record number of expenditures in highway construction. We have some negative impacts because the state didn't take any action this year. We've got a reduction in our CPA, and we've got a tax shift, a pretty dramatic tax shift actually in the property tax burden from onto both seasonal properties and residential properties. We tried to show that in the executive summary as well. So there is a lot going on here, but the result is, and on the tax levy, is a 4.3% increase. And again, that's what is included in the resolution before you. And from now until the end of the year, we could make changes to that if we see fit. Other than that, we don't have a presentation for you today. We can answer questions. We have the budget committee is here. Sarah and Steve and Randy are all here, and myself. So if you have questions, we can certainly answer them, and I'll leave it back to the board.
Anyone have any questions for Commissioner Persky?
Yeah. Mike, as far as the tax bill from the state, we were to get maybe an additional $1 million, and I hear that there could be a special session. Then I hear there won't be a special session. Would it be possible if they go ahead and do it early in the year when they first come back? I understand that they could even excuse the tax on Social Security because that's a political item. Would that be true too about this support for counties? So in other words, is it possible we would be getting that extra additional $1 million even though we're not budgeting for it at this time?
Commissioner Persky, if the state took some action before the end of the year, if there was a special session, and what was allocated with that tax bill that seemed to have bipartisan support, we would simply be able to budget for that and reduce the levy. So instead of a 4.3% levy increase, you'd have a 3% levy increase.
But my question would be then, but if it's not going to be by the end of the year?
If it's not by the end of the year?
Then not.
Well, if we were still to receive that additional funding, well, we wouldn't, at that point, we wouldn't be able to change the tax rate, though. No, we would not be able to, unless there was some special legislation.
Right, unless the special legislation allowed us to reconsider.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But, they really need to do it before the end of the year.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's going to get, it would be really cumbersome. I don't know how they would do that.
Okay.
Then, yeah.
Just asking if it's $1 million and we can get it, let's take it.
Yeah.
But no, if they did take, if it wasn't before the end of the year, it would be, we could make that change.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
I
Clark?
know that there's probably more questions, and I've gotten a chance to talk with staff, so I'm pretty good with mine. But so just to get us moving, I'm going to move adoption of the resolution, and then we can continue our conversation.
Okay, we got a motion. Do we have a second?
I can do that.
Okay, we have a second from Commissioner Lenzmeyer. Further discussion? Commissioner Bergen?
I just have some comments. You know, I think one of these years we've got to find a way to keep the increases to what's generated by new construction. I've got some things here that I've just kind of cut out. Here's proposed increases for 2023 from Xcel Energy. If you, a residence with overhead line service, they're proposing a $12.27 per month increase in their electric bills. If you have an underground line service, that's up to $17.24 per month increase. And here's the food prices from last year are up 8.8%. And what's happening is the farm costs are going up significantly, especially with fertilizers, and the farm prices, they expect a big increase starting this fall. And you can see the gas prices already starting to increase because the farm prices lag about 18 months behind where the consumer has to pay for it to catch up. And that's going to be starting this fall. So these taxpayers are going to be hit over and over and over again with one thing after another. So, I mean, I just can't support this because every year it's more than what our new construction here is going to give us, what, a couple $2 million extra, I think, if I remember correctly what the numbers were.
Yeah,
and we should be able to somehow,
a third of the increase.
somehow keep it to that. Because these people that are in the residence, besides these other taxes, they're going to be hit with big time increases. And then switching gears a little bit, something that has always rubbed me the wrong way is this something called the tax rate change. Just a simple example. Let's say you have a property valued at $100 and you pay $10 taxes. That's a 10% rate. The next year, your property value is at $200, but you pay $15 tax. Gee, that went down to 7.5% property tax rate. But yet your amount you're paying is 50% more. Increase in property values just does not put food on the table. And so I don't know. So those things always rub me the wrong way when they put those statistics in there. When you say it's when people read that they're getting a 2.5% property tax rate cut, it sounds like you're getting a property tax cut when they're not. That could be way higher.
Mr. Chair.
So anyway, those are just my comments, and I've said them before.
Yeah, Commissioner Morgan, I share your comments. I really do. There's some things that at the state level really need to be changed. And one of the things, I know that it doesn't appear likely anymore, but if they would actually come back in a special session, it wouldn't be just our CPA or county aid that we'd be seeing the increase and could decrease. It would also mean that homeowners would see better decreases, that it's something the state controls. And so it's really hard, and this whole thing is hard and complicated. I do appreciate that we are largely personnel related on our increase here, and there's not a lot we can really do about that, especially, that's our other piece, right, is attracting and retaining good staff, which we've got great staff, but that's where a lot of the increase in our energy costs and everything else go up too. So I think we all know that transportation is a big driver in this. Boy, that was a bad pun. But I think I know your point is, what can we do to stay within the number? It is almost impossible to do that and meet our state obligations. So I know we don't come to the same conclusion. I mean, I'm going to reluctantly be voting for this. But I do think part of the problem gets solved if the state would change some of the processes that would help deal with some of what you're talking about.
I just want to clarify something on the transportation. Our highway department budget overall has not increased year over year. The transportation, we talk about transportation, pretty much has nothing to do with our levy. The transportation has not increased the part coming out of the levy. Am I correct in that? Or if it has, it's been very minuscule.
It has increased, yes, 2.2%.
Coming out of the levy from year to year to year.
Yeah.
It's pretty much stable, more so than any other department. The part where the transportation is really increasing is what's come from the state or the federal government. That's the major part of where the transportation budget is increasing.
Sales tax. Sales tax.
And yeah, right, and the sales, yeah, but part coming out of the levy has been pretty steady. Oh, and the other thing, you know, for those of you that read economists and stuff, Milton Friedman, you know, he had 4 different levels of spending. The most efficient way is a person spending their own money on themselves. That's the most efficient. And he had 2 intermediate ones, and the least effective way for spending money was other people spending other people's money on other people.
And unfortunately, we probably have a group of people that don't fall into the first category, which causes problems. But, you know, and I think part of it too, you have to look at, it's a growth factor issue. You know, if we were a stagnant county, you know, and not a growth county, we probably wouldn't see, you know, these things going on either. You know, how many employees right now would you say the county is down from 3 years ago? Because there's always openings, right?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't it like 70 or so openings right now?
I
I mean, they're still in the budget, right? The salaries are in the budget, but.
And we do work those savings, you know, into this, as that number has increased in the last few years, yeah. I think we probably have, 60 vacancies today? 70 vacancies today, so, and it's typically not been that much, and that does work into the budget.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think we had a motion in a second, correct? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. And again, aye. And again, this is a preliminary.
Right, preliminary.
Opposed?
Aye.
Roll call.
Commissioner Persky.
Aye.
Commissioner Merrigan.
Nay.
Commissioner Lensmeyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Commissioner Notch.
Aye.
Passes 4-1.
Okay, motion passes 4-1. Anything else, Mike?
No, sir. I guess I'll just mention one thing. We are getting levies from other areas. You know, it's due by the end of the month, and we are seeing significant levy increases. So St. Cloud and Sartell and St. Joe all are over 17%. So 4.3 may not seem like a low number to you, but it's compared to others, I think it's pretty good.
Compared to other counties, I believe it's going to be lower too.
Yeah. You know, and we're just one aspect of everybody's property tax statement, you know, local jurisdictions, school boards, watersheds.
Yep.
So, all right, then I guess next up, issues by commissioners. Commissioner Clark, would you like to lead it off?
Let's see, just to reinforce what Jody brought up, there'll be a transportation forum for our region on October 14th. People are able to be there. That would be good. We got a chance to meet, Jody and Commissioner Persky and myself got a chance to meet with a number of our delegation last week on transportation. There'll be some good follow-up. I really appreciate particularly what Congressman Emmer and our 2 senators have done for some of our projects. It was good to be able to put that forward. Now we need our legislative partners to be doing the same, which is why that forum is important.
Commissioner Persky?
Yeah, and I'll just comment about the state legislature. We were very concerned about the IIJA money because that was a federal infrastructure bill with, billions of dollars out to the states, and we did not, finish the transportation bill, so we ran the risk of missing some of that dollars. So just at the conference, Nancy Daubenberger was there, MnDOT commissioner, and to resolve that, it appears that the state's going to go ahead and borrow money from future projects to go ahead and meet those matching funds, so we aren't going to miss out necessarily on those dollars. But then again, those are borrowed from future projects opposed to, funds that have been allocated. So it's a little bit of a shell game. So it's somewhat encouraging and discouraging to hear that. So, but dollars we won't miss. And then I just wanted to, again, thank Randy for the work he's been doing on elections, answering questions of people that have concerns and the follow-up on those things. And Randy, I believe his early voting has opened. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
So people have the opportunity to come here into the
City Hall and at the Service Center.
if they'd like to vote. Yeah, and of course we want to encourage as many people to partake in our democracy as possible. So thank you.
Commissioner Mergen?
Yeah, I just want to go back to the interference with the nonpartisan commissioners' elections. Have you inadvertently run across anything new with that? Okay, I've been doing some questioning and stuff, and I've been given a name, same name has come up more than one time from different people, but I'm still verifying. It's also interesting to note, here's something else I think needs to be looked into a little bit. The questionnaire that came out has come from the Senate District 14 chair, okay? And that questionnaire is reaching over into Senate District 13. Why is the questionnaire that came to candidates in Senate District 13 not come from the Senate District 13 chair of that party? That's a question I think needs to be answered. It's coming from the Senate District 14 chair. So that's something to be looking into and getting answered.
I don't understand. Start over.
Okay, we got a couple Senate districts in the area.
Yeah.
Senate District 14's over to the east.
Yeah.
District 13's to the west. Okay, this questionnaire that came out came from the chair in Senate District 14, the DFL chair in Senate District 14. And it got sent not only to the Senate District 14 candidates, but also to any of the candidates that are in Senate District 13.
Okay.
Whereas that questionnaire should have come out from the chair in Senate District 13 for candidates in Senate District 13. That needs to have some more verification done. So I'm starting to dig into this and starting to get some radio time on this. There, that's it.
Okay. Commissioner Lenzmeyer?
More and more, listening to the sheriff's report just points out that the overlap of services to the various departments are getting a little more challenging to differentiate. We've got frequent flyers in the county that interface with law enforcement, mental health, and social services. And these are some folks that are just challenged just by everyday life. But nevertheless, we have to address those concerns. There's less clear-cut lines between the departments. For folks like that, used to be, you listen to the sheriff's presentation and the question always used to come up, well, what are we going to do with these positions when the grants expire? Well, the reality has been that those positions have been integrated, or those services have been integrated into several different departments. And then also, it's pretty tough to sell the concept of savings because we don't have a way to measure the impact of prevention. And we do have programs that focus on prevention, but to project what the financial implications would be had those types of programmings not existed, is pretty tough. I mean, you get into the area of would have been, could have been, should have been, and pretty soon folks are calling you out for that, justifiably so. But it is a factor. So the good news is that, in my opinion, is that the various departments are getting better at integrating services than ever before. Jeff Johnson, our recently departed county assessor, made a interesting observation that when he started with Stearns County, the difference between the departments, he would characterize the difference as walls between the various departments. And he said now they're much more like curtains, and that it's much easier to get the departments to integrate their services. So while, again, it's difficult to measure, if the department heads weren't willing to integrate their services with other departments, I think it wouldn't be enough, Jeff, to even quadruple your estimates of cost increases. We are achieving some benefit from that willingness to do so. And one of the benefits is improved customer service. And while government will always be the opportunity for amateur therapy for folks to call us out on, the reality is well, it certainly never will be perfect. I mean, for that matter, neither is religion, but we're getting better, and because we have to. And it's been an adventure to watch all this.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, I guess I'll say, just for public service announcement, we do have that special meeting October 4th, next Tuesday at 9, right, to cover short-term vacation rental issues. So stay tuned. If anybody wants to attend, you can attend.
Mike, you want to bring up the 17th?
Thank you, Commissioner Persky. And yes, mentioning the special meeting is we do have our annual strategic planning session, which would be an all-day session with the leadership team on Tuesday, October 18th scheduled. And I'm starting to hear that there may be a lack of attendance at that, which is a little bit concerning. So if the board wanted to make any changes because of that, we should do that in the near term, because we do have a facilitator scheduled to plan to help us through that day.
Commissioner Clark.
And I talked to Dr. Williams about this. If it needs to be changed, and I'm available that day, but if it needs to be changed, let's figure out how to get a date relatively soon, because this starts in motion, the whole review of this last year and the next year.
Like, so who wouldn't be able to attend?
I'm the bad guy.
Well,
so,
yeah.
and
But
it's better if we can
Commissioner
all be
Mergen,
there.
I think, he explained his thoughts. And I understand that. I very much would like to have a full board there. I understand where Jeff's coming from, but it's too bad not to have a full board.
Right, and since it is this year's board that sets it for next year and gets the staff motion going, it's appropriate that we are doing it. Otherwise, it's just a big delay. So if you can't be there, you can't be there.
My suggestion was that we wait till after the election. So we have
it would have to be next.
It still has to be this year's board.
Oh, yeah.
But we're still the ones that
It would have to be
adopted.
next year then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until after this election.
Yeah, but it's.
Right, but they don't
person
get
that-
sworn in until.
Right, but they would still be in
Well,
attendance at that.
But I wasn't invited to the one when I got elected, and he wasn't invited, and it's this board that has to make those decisions. So we just need to get it done so we can get moving. I don't care if it's after the election or not, but it's this board.
I mean, that was just my suggestion.
So after the election, and then invite the new,
Whoever is
yeah.
And then we'll still
Actually,
need to vote on it.
I'd appreciate even, you've been here 10 years. I think you plan to participate, right?
I do not plan to be there.
I wish you would, because we still have to vote on it.
Commissioner Mergen, I would appreciate you being there.
Yeah,
I
me
appreciate
too.
your opinion.
Honest, Jeff, some of us like you.
Yes. It makes a difference.
I just thought it would be more appropriate if the replacement was there.
And they'll get to next fall.
No, we'd like you there.
We'll see.
We're not getting any.
Okay,
let you
so
go
are
there.
we
Yeah, exactly.
tentatively going to leave it for the 17th?
It's the 18th.
Oh, it is the
Yeah.
18th, so it's Tuesday.
Lacking any board action, I'm
And
going to
then-
leave it on the 18th, yes.
Oh,
Then another issue is, remember, right, we also have a municipal league meeting at that night at Painesville at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, just pointing that out.
Government
Perfect, we can leave
overdose.
this and go right over there.
Yeah,
Okay.
and to that point, this year we did schedule a little differently. It's not after a regular board meeting, so we should be able to be out in time to attend an evening meeting if people want to go to that, which I know some will.
Just 'cause it'll be a long day.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're going to be golden yet? Okay, so we'll leave it on the 18th?
Okay.
Okay. All right, other than that, I don't have anything else, so we'll call the meeting adjourned.